YouTube, how the duck you doing? Films here, and what I have for you today is a Deadlock setting video. Now, a lot of people have been asking me what my settings are for Deadlock. Some questions being, how are you playing in stretch res without having your UI messed up, and how do you get such good FPS and so on? So I'm gonna quickly go over all of my settings. Of course, my settings might be completely different than yours because our PC specs can be different, which again, perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that. These are just the settings that work well for me. Now, if you're not getting the best frame rate in this game, it's because this game isn't the best optimized. You can run certain types of configs, although some might get you in trouble, some may not. I personally don't really mess with any configs. I only tweak the FOV a little bit, which is not really breaking the rules or anything of the sort. It's something in the game. That's the only thing I actually change. You can change other things in Convars, but I'd be really careful with what you pick and choose. But let's actually dive into the settings. So let's get started with the video settings. So in the displays tab, you can adjust your resolution and aspect ratio. So here's what I recommend. For borderless window, this is for convenience. If you're streaming, if you're just doing multitasking while playing this game, having it on borderless window is always convenient because you can tab out and you're fine. Full screen will give you the best performance. I play 16:10 at 1920 by 1200 at 360 hertz because that is the hertz of my monitor. Now this is stretched for 16:10. When you're playing stretch, sometimes your UI gets completely messed up, but I find that when I play 16:10 at this specific resolution, my UI doesn't get messed up in any way, shape, or form. A lot of people tell me that their UI gets messed up when they play stretch, but for me, this is what I find that works the best and looks the best. So what I like to do, of course, advanced setting on. So for upscaling technology, DLSS is for NVIDIA graphics card users. FSR2 is best for non-NVIDIA graphics cards. So if you're running, AMD card or anything of the sort, FSR2 is probably what you're going to be looking for. FSR general is like your middle ground, and then stretched is going to give you the worst possible quality of the game, but it will give you the best performance. It just depends what you're looking for. Are you looking for performance, or if you're looking for quality of the game in general? If you've got a modern NVIDIA card, maybe I would say 30 series up, or maybe 40 series up. I'm not sure where the entry level is now. I would probably run NVIDIA DLSS, but if you're having a lot of issues, you could probably run stretched, even though the graphics and the quality is going to look terrible. You will be getting a lot better performance. And now you might be thinking, what the heck is scaling mode? Now you might be wondering, what the heck is scaling mode? Well, scaling mode is essentially the higher the scaling, the more FPS you get, from my understanding, and the lower scaling is the better visual quality. Now, I'm not sure if that's right what I said or if it's wrong. If you know, let me know in the comments below. I'm not the most tech savvy person, but that's just my general understanding. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I apologize for that. But I just have it set to 1x. Then we go to the other section where it is DLSS. Honestly, generally, if you want the most FPS, besides, this DLSS model, you could just put everything to low, which typically I do because it's usually the best option because this is going to give you the most FPS in general. Certain qualities are not necessarily needed. Sometimes the distance is nice, but shadow quality isn't really needed. Texture quality, if you like better textures, you can raise it. But generally, in terms of performance standard, you don't really need to run it anything other than high or off. You don't need to run it besides low or off. So those are the things I'm kind of looking for. Then post-process bloom. Honestly, post-process effects, area lights, these are all, except for VSync, these are all preference. So area lights, effects bloom, post-process. I always have these off on every single game that I play because I just don't think they're really needed. It only gives you a small performance cost, as it literally labels in the description. Same with these two. These are just performance-based. VSync is something you always want off because it's just generally not good. It does reduce screen tearing, especially if you're having those screen tearing issues. If you're having those screen tearing issues, you can try messing with your in-game maximum FPS and try to match it up with what your monitor hertz rate is set to. That's what I found that works the best. but generally you don't need to worry about VSync being on. Basically, it reduces screen tearing, but it increases input delay, which is terrible in a competitive game. So that's what I just have. So again, moving on to the options for rendering, you want to set your max FPS, like I said, to your max refresh rate of your monitor, so 360 for mine. You can go slightly higher for consistency, but you don't want to overdo it because you won't necessarily see the difference. So moving on to, just like the FPS and other options. In-game maximum FPS should be set to where your refresh rate is for your monitor, so that, it is pretty one-to-one, because you can go slightly higher for consistency, but you won't really notice the difference beyond what your monitor is set to. Other optionals are like, you can do Vulkan. If you're seeing a lot of stability issues, you can try Vulkan. Otherwise, use Direct 3D. You can use it if it's supported, like G-Sync and so on, but I typically don't mess with these settings because genuinely, minimize on focus loss is pretty good. Reduce flash lightnings, that's fine. It's like, these are all optional. You can turn this on if you want to, but again, not necessarily the most important aspect. HUD telemetry is just what you want to. Do you want to see your FPS? Do you want to see frame time alert? Do you want to show your ping? Do you want to show your jitters? So on and so forth. Typically, having it always consistently on is a good idea. This is the dashboard. So if I increase this in the dashboard to 360, you can see that my FPS changes. So I just put it to 360. You can see that's kind of what we're sitting at. Again, this game isn't really optimized too well because it is a early access, beta or build of the game. So eventually, hopefully they optimize it better so it's actually a lot more editable. You get better stability, things like that, but this is kind of what we're looking for the video and display configurations. So for audio, all of this is personal preference. The only thing I care about is, where is it? The only thing you care about is having push to talk. Like, that is the only thing you care about. You don't want to open mic, so turn all this off. As long as you're on push to talk, it's fine. If you have open mic, it's like you're in the Xbox 360 party chat all over again with your open mic. So just have these off. For reticles, turn off themed hero reticles. They're not needed. If you turn them on, it just looks really bad. And you can't have a custom crosshair. You would have to go in and individually change it for every single character. For crosshairs are all optional. This depends on what you like to see. I have mine set to yellow. Of course, you can copy it if you want to and tweak it with however you want, but that's kind of what I'm running. For camera, invert mouse off, mouse sensitivity on 0.35, so like 35 cm at 1600 dpi, kind of where I'm sitting. Zoom sensitivity ratio 1, zoom lock off, camera FOV 90, but I go into Convars and change my FOV a little bit. Again, not against the rules. Other aspects of Convars is against the rules, but I only change it for FOV. It makes everything seem further away. You get a little bit more vision, but the downside is that like players that seem further away on your screen might be actually closer than they are, so they could hit you with melees, and it looks like a TP melee, but that's kind of the idea. Now, you can turn this on if you want to. It's pretty helpful. I think it's useful having this on because it kind of builds muscle memory and prevents mistakes when you have this on, because it lets you know that you have an active item and it shows you a pop-up for selecting and managing a slot assignment. So basically, if I go to this shop, buy an active item, it tells you where you want to place it so that you can move it around easier. If you turn it off and you buy an active item, it just puts it into a random spot. So this kind of reminds you that you have an active item bought. It forcefully tells your brain that you bought an active item, essentially. So if I bought Dispel Magic, I would have to put it into a spot that I want. That means it's kind of telling my brain subconsciously that I have an active item on that spot. If you're a newer player, I recommend putting it on. If you've been playing this game for a while, you know where all your active abilities go. If you're used to certain types of build, then I would just keep it off. But honestly, for newer players or players that are not the best at keeping track of their active items, having it on is a good idea. Then we have like skill rating stuff. You can turn this on. I've heard things with this extra competitive, having it on is good, having it on is bad. I've heard a whole bunch of different arguments of it works, it doesn't work, and so on. You can either have it on or off. From my understanding, it doesn't really do too much, but hopefully in the future this kind of will change, but we shall see. Skill rating is nice to have on because it just lets you know when you're changing ranks, and you can kind of see the average of the lobby, things like that. I will say one thing that's rather important is casting ability. You can have hero specific keybinds. For some of the characters, I do in fact have that because of how I like to play. For example, like Viscous, you might want ability default for Puddle Punch, so you know where to line it up. But for same with the cube. But for a character like Geist, you might want Essence Bomb on ability default, but you want Life Drain and Soul Exchange on instant cast. Instant cast is probably one of the better ways to play this game because essentially it will instantly do your ability. Instant cast is that, right? It instantly cues your ability. If you play, if I go to here specific and I go to Lash, and I do ability default for grapple, and I go over here, or maybe this isn't the best character to show it on. Maybe we go Geist. So if I go to Geist, and I do Essence Bomb, this is ability default, right? I get to choose where I want to place it, and I can see the AoE. But if I were to go back in, go to Geist, and I went to instant cast, I just instantly throw it. Having these options are great because if you're newer to the game, you can have the default ability, so you can start practicing with how abilities are supposed to be placed. But as time goes on and you start understanding the game, you start understanding where the limitations of abilities go, you can eventually change everything to instant cast so that you can get your abilities off faster. It's not necessarily an advantage or a disadvantage. Having it on ability default gives you more accurate like ability placement, but having it on is instant cast saves you a little bit of time. Like if you had Life Drain and you had it on ability default, you essentially have to press 2 and select somebody. That could like waste time. Whereas if you have it on instant cast, you're instantly getting that health regen, or you're instantly getting the Life Drain off. So these are all factors that play into the difference between like a lower level and a higher level player. Someone who's been playing the game for like a week versus, a year or so. It's completely optional. Eventually you will want to get to instant cast, but like I said, until then you don't necessarily need to worry about it. But like I said, for most characters I just play instant cast because that's usually the best way to play the characters. Honestly, items, your active items, the only one I changed was 3 and I put it to a mouse button. Having different items is good. I usually just have it on item default. It's the same case of like what I was saying before with when you place certain like items. For instance, Divine Barrier. I want to know who I'm placing my Divine Barrier on, and it lets me know who I'm placing on as well. Instead, if I put it on instant cast, it's just going to instantly cast to that person. Sometimes I don't want to put it on said person, or I get a little bit confused. Or when you try to do it, it kind of bugs out and goes to like the closest person. So having it on ability default's rather fine in my eyes. Yeah. The only other thing I recommend, having a secondary crouch/slide button set to something different, and having your jump or mantle having an alternative cast as well, which is scroll wheel down for me, and I have C for side. It just allows you to do different sorts of aerial movement items, or aerial movement, I guess, techniques or movement. It's just good to have in my eyes. It's always nice to have alternative buttons for certain abilities or movement, whatever the case may be, so it's definitely a good idea. Crouch slide, never have it to toggle. Toggle sucks. That's a lot of the case. All of this is default, normal. Chat wheel, communication, this is all good if you don't want to talk in chat. at least having some form of way to communicate to your team is a good idea. All this is pretty much the same. Audio, make sure you have, push to talk. It's always a good idea. That's really about it, I would say. You can go in, mess around with the chat wheel if you wanted to, kind of change how certain ways are said, stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much all the in-game settings. If you have any other in-game settings that you would like to know about, just let me know in the comments down below. If I somehow missed one, do let me know. So there was actually one more thing I wanted to talk about, and that was Convars. So if I come to here, I go to properties, come all the way down to installed files, go to browse, go to game, Citadel. What you want is the gameinfo.gi. Click on it, go to edit in notepad. Wow. This was an old config that I changed, and I didn't like config, so I just removed it. What you want to do is go Control F, and you type in Convars. This is if you want a different FOV, right? I don't know why it's doing that, but basically Convars. This is Convars. So what you do is you paste r_aspect ratio, all in quotations, 2.4. This is essentially like 105 FOV, if I recall. There's a whole bunch of different numbers, and you can mess around with what number you want to be placed here, as long as it follows a set of rules. So in quotations, and it's underneath the Convars line above the min, max, and default. As long as it's placed in this line, you can use it and change it to a different aspect ratio. Again, 2.4, I believe, is like 105 FOV, if I recall correctly. But that's kind of what I like to run. You can move up this number and be at an even crazier FOV. The only thing you have to remember is make sure you save it. If you don't save it, it won't change. But yeah, that's the only thing I change in Convars. You can tweak around, make your own config to make things easier to see, maybe increase FOV, increase FPS and other aspects, but the only thing I change is FOV. Again, it's not against TOS or anything. The only thing that is against TOS is, I think there was an exploit where you could see people through walls if you went through Convars, but the only thing I care about is the aspect ratio. Playing on 90 FOV is fine, but playing on stuff greater than 90 is nice because you can absorb more information. However, with a wider FOV, it is tanking your system a little bit more because it's processing more objects and everything than it would normally do. But what you gain is that you see more information, but that information is all obtainable by anyone. But this makes it easier. It doesn't necessarily change too much. But yeah, that's kind of what I do. But anyways, that pretty much wraps up the setting video. If this video helped you in any way, shape, or form, or you want to see some other types of Deadlock or Marvel Rivals content, do let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to like the video if it helped you in any way. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I hope you have a great and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one.